All right, Matt. So let's get started with the overview of Local Law 97.
Sure. So I think our clients' firsthand experience with the Climate Mobilization Act were actually the letter grades which fall under Local Law 95. However, the centerpiece of the legislature is really Local Law 97, which essentially is a tax on how much carbon your building produces with the energy that it uses. So, the end goal here is to reduce the carbon emissions for the city by 80% in the year 2050. We have two benchmark years upcoming, and that's 2025 and 2030, where the city will really assess how much carbon your building produces, and then you have to hit certain thresholds in order to avoid the fines. And the penalties, just like every local law that is in existence, they come with penalties if you're not in compliance. When it comes to Local Law 97, the penalties if you're not in compliance can be excessive. I mean, they can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm going to transition this over to Joe. He'll go over a few data points and simple things which you can do to assess what sort of an impact this local law will have on your property.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. So when we think about Local Law 97, I think it really boils down to three questions. And the first one is, how is Local Law 97 determining what my carbon fines are? And the important thing to take away from 97 is that all of the local laws are interrelated. So you need to ensure that 84 is correct. So Local 84, the benchmarking law that's been around for a decade, that is the basis for your Local Law 97 output. Local Law 84 is broken up into two parts. We have the space parameters of your building, so square footage, units, bedrooms. All of that information is the baseline for how much carbon your building is allowed to use under the law and how you will have your fine determined as a result. So what we recommend as a first step in this entire process, Local Law 84 has been around for a decade. You may have looked at your information 5-10 years ago under a compliance idea, but now there are real world implications for the information that we're submitting. So the step one is always going to be look at the information, make sure it's accurate. And once it's confirmed, and we know that we're accounting for every square foot within the building, whether that's commercial square footage or below grade space that may not be accounted for, then we can move on to the next step of what is my energy, how is it being consumed, and what can I do about it? So that's really the next step. Once I've validated my building square footage, how is my energy being consumed? And you'll see that in 99% of buildings, 75% of it is going to be dedicated to heating, whether that's gas, oil, or steam. And that's going to represent about 70% of your carbon output. Energy measures should be focused on that specific idea. How do I drive efficiency in my heating system? And the final takeaway from energy efficiency proposals on the heating side, historically, we would look at them from an ROI. We're going to reduce consumption by 10,000 therms or 10,000 gallons. That is going to save me X number of dollars. Now that ROI needs to be viewed through a lens of how much carbon am I going to avoid and what is my real return on investment when I factor those two things together. And I think that's a good segue into different packages that exist for carbon mitigation efforts.
Great, thank you. And are you finding that the benchmarking that was used, I hear this often from buildings that aren't yet with us, that the benchmarking potentially wasn't correct and their letter grade unfortunately suffered, or they didn't even file, period, and didn't, I guess, in essence, turn in their homework?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, the benchmarking effort from inception was seen more as a compliance nuisance. Now that we are 10 years into the process, you will have buildings that have hired an architect or an engineer to measure the building so that we know we have full accuracy in the information. But there are an equal number of buildings that either one, have no real idea what 84 and 97 mean, or two, haven't spent the time necessary with their building executive or their super reviewing the information that's on file and then updating it in real time so that we have accurate information to base all future decisions on.
And then are there some buildings that fall out of the realm of having to do this work, or is this across the board? Every building in New York City has to do this right now.
So 25,000 square feet or greater fall under Local Law 97. that at this point, if you are having your building managed by AKAM, very likely you fall under this compliance arena. There's a chance if you have multiple buildings across multiple lots, there may be certain components that don't fall into the law. But I would say without fail, the buildings are likely going to be required to comply with local law 97.
Understood. And so now the fines are going to really start to get in the way of things if you didn't pay attention to your benchmarking, and now you're not paying attention to local law 97, then that's when the penalties are start to incur.
Exactly. And now is really the time to get ahead of things. We have 2 years in advance of the first compliance window beginning. So the real start of this is January 2024. That's when year one energy consumption to be reported in 2025 that will result in a potential carbon fine. So there is a finite window to review your building information, make certain capital changes to the building that could have an immediate impact and yield a real result come 2025.
Got it. Okay. And so by 2024, though, the work needs to have started to get underway.
Exactly. To be able to account for the heating season in 2024, really, we have about a year to go before anything would need to be in place.